Thank you all very much for being here today and for joining us for the annual State of the City address. It is my honor and privilege to serve as your mayor for the city of Punta Gorda, our wonderful, wonderful, beautiful city. And it's very exciting. We have a lot of great things going on in the city. And I'm going to just give you a brief overview of some of the major projects that are happening right now, some of the things we accomplished in the 2021 calendar year, and what we have going on for 2022 and the future. So this is currently our city council. You've just been introduced to all of them. We have 5 people on our city council, and we are evenly distributed by a population density across the city in 5 districts. Now, you'll hear in a little while, I'm going to talk a little bit about the redistricting that just happened with the city. All municipalities and cities, counties, states, and federal government must go through the census every 10 years and redistrict according to the updated population density in different communities. So we just did that, and I'll talk a little bit about that in a few minutes. So this guy up here is the best thing that we ever did as a city council in this city. Greg Murray, you are incredible. I don't know what we would do without you, and certainly you have made a huge difference in our city in just 18 months of being with us, and we thank you immensely for that. So we're going to talk a little bit about the budget, first of all. You all know we are in a very, very good place with our city budget. We had to take a totally different approach to doing our budget for 2022. In that we used to take 1 year at a glance when we were doing our budget planning. With our new budget, we have gone into a different format where we're looking at 5 years and into the future, which is a very good thing. The most important thing when you look at this is based on a $250,000 value house. And you can see where we lie in terms of what it costs you in taxes versus other communities of similar sizes. So, for the value for the money, Punta Gorda is certainly a great deal. If you look at what our millage rate is, which is currently 3.950, all of our basic amenities are included in our tax base in the city of Punta Gorda. When you look at other communities, many communities, including Charlotte County, have a lot of what they call MSBUs. That's a municipal service benefit unit. And fire and police may be an additional fund that is additional on your tax bill that is not included in your millage rate. We have a lot of things in our budget, such as the paving program. The paving program is paid for by gas tax. So we're very, very lucky that we have a lot of different funds we can draw from in order to make sure our budget comes out at an even number at the end of the year. So the national recommended amount that you're supposed to keep in a reserve account is 16.7% of your annual budget. That is the nationally recommended amount that all municipalities keep in a budget in a separate fund in case of emergencies. And as we found out after Hurricane Charlie, after Hurricane Irma, it's important that we have that money in a reserve account in case it's needed. So we actually, for many years before I got on council, before any of us were on council with this current council, they were using part of the reserve account annually to balance the budget. And unfortunately, it drained the reserve account significantly to the point where it was very dangerously low. So in a concerted effort to try to correct that problem, we added 0.5% each year to our budget amount to accommodate for bringing that number back up to where it needs to be. So in this particular calendar year, what we've just done is we put not only our 0.5% in, but we had surplus funds from 2021 that we were able to add into this account, which brought in another $642,000. And we also had $120,000 sitting in a separate place that was an overage that we received back from our insurance premiums a couple of years ago. So we've brought it up very close to 13.5% now. So we're in a very good place. And at the end of this year, we'll be adding another 0.5%. We're going to keep going until we get to 16.7% to make sure that we are viable and sustainable in case of anything happening in our city. So this is a little bit of an overview of the last 3 years of some of the projects that have happened in the city. And you know, you look at a lot of the single-family permits, which is the most dramatic change that you see day after day. You see a huge amount of construction for single-family homes. We also had a significant amount of duplexes that were built last year. Some of those were on San Rocco, on Virginia, Fitzhugh, Albacete, Carmelita, and on Wood Thrush. So there were a significant number of duplex units put in last year, all of which are very helpful to the residential base, but we also are looking at commercial, which we really would like to increase the percentage of. So a couple of the commercial buildings that took place that started in 2021 and will be completed in 2022 and possibly even 23 is one is the assisted living facility at Akiasta and Socorro. One is the assisted living facility down by the entrance of Seminole Lakes, and the other is a car wash that is going to be built next door to where the police fire safety, public safety building is on Tamiami. And two of the commercial build-outs include the Dough Bar and Ichi Hibachi Restaurant. So those are some of the numbers that you can see a difference in the residential versus commercial build-out for the last year. This is where we currently are as of December with build-out in some of our residential communities, the larger communities across the city. PGI is at 93.9%, and that's significant because also when you look at Burnt Store Isles at 90.6 and Burnt Store Meadows at 81.8%, that significantly changes the population density in those three communities, and that's why we had to do some redistricting. So this year in the redistricting effort, what we've done is, if you take a look at our overall city map, we have the 5 districts. District 1 is the east side and the historic district primarily, and they've increased some residential, so that has gotten a few more people in that district. District 2 pretty much stayed the same. District 3 has now come down. I used to have, my district is District 4. My district used to be primarily the southern half of PGI. And now District 3 has kind of taken some of those streets on the southwest section of PGI. And then my district has swung a little bit further south, so I have properties in PGI and also a significant number of streets in Burnt Store Isles with this transition. And then District 5, which is Melissa's district, is the rest of Burnt Store Isles, Burnt Store Meadows, Seminole Lakes, and the properties along Burnt Store Road that are annexed into the city. So where this becomes significant is, especially with canal front properties, you will see that the properties that are in PGI, we usually use vacant lots to stage the barge for our seawall replacement program. And as the properties become less and less available, we're going to have to make plans for what is Plan B when we no longer have vacant lots to use for that purpose. And it's the same in Burnt Store Isles. So I'll talk about that in just a minute. So for this 2021, we follow our mission, and we certainly want to keep this mission as our mainstay, to preserve and enhance Punta Gorda's identity as a vibrant waterfront community, unique in character and history, and as a desirable place to live, work, and visit. Here's a couple of the major projects we accomplished in 2021. We finally were able to annex the Public Works and Utility Campus, which is on the Cooper Street extension. We had Public Works offices that weren't in the city. And once we got Nino's Bakery and all those properties back there annexed into the city, then they became contiguous, so we were able to finally annex those properties. We finally got our veterans pavers back into the park at Veterans Park, which is significant because we had taken them out a couple of years ago to clean them and restore them. And we finally got those back in last year, along with the brand new mural that's out there. It's absolutely beautiful. If you haven't seen it, I strongly encourage you to go out there and see that. We've been doing a lot of updated signage throughout the city to reflect our newer logo and our whole artwork that we're using for all of our advertising and promotion throughout the city. In 2021, we did a complete rewrite of our Chapter 6 Code of Ordinances, which governs all the canals and waterways, and we made sure that all of that stuff was brought up to date. So there were things that over the years the Canal Advisory Committees updated things, and we had sort of piecemeal additions to our code, so that was all updated during 2021. We also did, as everybody's probably familiar, we did an update to Chapter 26, which is our sign code ordinance. And that was a major project. I'm sure it's still a work in progress to some extent, but we did do a lot of that last year. Okay, so 2022, one of the big things we do every year, we have a legislative delegation that comes to Punta Gorda once a year. And our legislators from the state legislature are State Representative Michael Grant, State Senator Ben Albritton, and State Senator Joe Gruters come to Punta Gorda, and all the major municipalities, counties, school boards, everybody goes and asks for funding for various projects that they would like to see the state help them with budget-wise. So this year we put 5 projects in, and this is probably the most we've ever done. But once again, we're thinking forward, and we know we need some things that we don't currently have. So one of the things we asked for was money for our VCAT program. This is a program that was implemented last year by the police department for all of our veterans in the community. The folks in the PD that are veteran officers put this program together, and they will assist veterans who are in need. And we want to be able to do that program and do it right, so we've asked for funding for that. And Representative Grant has assured us that he's going to try to push that forward for us. We also asked for money for a fire and police safety training facility. We currently have a fire station that's no longer in service behind Burnt Store Shopping Center, and we're going to be converting that, if we get the funds for it, to put in a fire training safety facility. Right now we have the use of the county's facility, but we are at their liberty as far as availability and time, and then we have to take units out of service, and we have to take staff on overtime to take them over to the county tower to work on their required recurrent training. So we asked for money for that, and thankfully it's already passed through one committee with unanimous support, so that's good. Water quality is something on everyone's mind. That's certainly something we are working on. We want to eventually convert the properties in Charlotte Park from septic to sewer, and I'll talk about that in a minute as well. We also asked for funds for economic development support in case we get a project where we can support a developer who wants to bring in a big project, and we can work with them and partner with them. So you all know about our sales tax program. The 1% sales tax program has funded hundreds of projects for us over the last 20 years, and it was reapproved in 2020 on the ballot. And these are the projects that were approved in that proposal. So we're working our way through that list, and we'll be taking care of those projects as the funds become available. The city gets approximately 10% of the total amount of funds that are collected from that through the county. And we get approximately $3 to $5 million a year to help us with projects of this type. So one of the big projects, this is going to be a major project, one of the big projects we're starting to work on right now is the historic City Hall renovation. We have a building that is a historic building that hasn't been very well taken care of over the years and is in dire need of some really, really good TLC. So we're going to be having to spend quite a bit of money to renovate the building. At the same time, our city council chamber has become very inadequate for the needs that we have at this time. So we're taking a look overall at what we need and what we have to have going forward, not only for today and tomorrow, but 10 and 20 years down the road, because we don't want to rebuild it a second time. But we'll be building a new city council chamber. We have to also make sure that we're ADA compliant. We want to increase security, and we want to have better technology in that chamber. Another project that will be funded by the 1% program, and hopefully also some grant funding, is our historic A.C. Freeman House, which is the gateway house when you come south over the bridges. It's the first thing you see, along with the Indian statue. And that house had to be shut down because we had some water intrusion from pipes that burst in the walls and in the ceiling. So unfortunately, it's not in service at this time, but we have to put some money into that, and we're looking for grant funding. We're hoping that by putting it back in the historic register that we will be able to request funds for grant funding, and we'll get that project moving forward soon. We'll be finishing our Gilchrist Park renovations this year. This is the last phase of the Gilchrist Park Harbor Walk project. We will be putting additional parking on street and also inside the park at the west end of the park, down by where the boat club and the Bayfront Center are. And that's been planned for several years, and we just approved the funding for that project to happen. These are all pretty much all 1% sales tax fund projects, by the way, and without these, we would unfortunately have to raise the millage rate. So this is a very good program for all of us to have. So we also are doing some sidewalk improvements. There are several streets in the community that dangerously need sidewalks to help those who want to commute back and forth to shopping and all the facilities within the city. William Street is one of those. We're putting a sidewalk in there that they never had. And there are big sections of Henry Street that don't have sidewalks that are very dangerous because people do tend to go pretty quickly down Henry Street, unfortunately. And the police are keeping a close eye on that. We'll be doing some renovations on our nature park, which is at the four-way stop sign in TGI, for those who may not know where it is. That also has to become ADA compliant. We need a new pier out there, and we need some ADA accessibility, drainage, and a fishing pier to be built. So that'll be one of the projects funded by the 1%. Touched on this earlier, the septic to sewer conversion is primarily right now we're focusing on the 3 areas of Charlotte Park. We have a lot of waterfront property in Charlotte Park that have septic, and in many cases those systems are very old. And as they become extinct and the leach fields are draining into our waterways and destroying our water quality, it becomes a big problem. There's a national mandate coming down from the federal government that all properties that are on septic will eventually be converted to sewer. And so we are starting the process of engineering and design for this project. However, we're not going to move anything forward until we discover what ways we can find funding for it, because it's going to be significant. Right now, if we had to do it today, the properties involved would be probably having to pay $25,000 per unit to get converted to sewer. And we know we can't do that to people. So what we're looking to do is get that more down around the $10,000, $11,000 range if we can find grant funding or other funding to help pay for it. The Boca Grande Drainage Improvements Project, this is something we've been working on for quite a while. We got a $1 million appropriation from the state government last year from the legislative agenda. Thank you, Jay Williams and Senator Albritton's office for that. It was Senator Albritton, by the way, is the chair of the Water Quality Appropriation Subcommittee for the state. So we have a pretty good in with Senator Albritton when we ask for water quality improvements. But this project is something that's near and dear to us because it's a part of our community that is in a very low-lying area, and every time it rains, they get severe flooding on the properties there. And some of these younger folks with kids have a lot of families over there. The kids are having to play in a lot of water puddles, and it's very unsafe. And there's other things that happen when you have stagnant water. So we're working on putting in a whole new drainage agenda out there. We've purchased some properties, and we have one more property to acquire before we can actually move it forward. But that's something we're continuing to work on as well. The Lashley Park Playground, for those who has grandchildren that come to the city and want to go to the playgrounds, this is a playground. We had to take the equipment out a couple of years ago because it was in very bad condition. It was unsafe for the kids. So what we've decided to do is we're putting in new equipment that's going to be all water quality equipment. So there's going to be lots of dump buckets and fountain type things and lots of fun equipment for the kids to play on. And we have found that the longer we have dragged this project out, the more it's costing us. So now we're at approximately $600,000. City Council gave the staff the approval to move forward with purchasing the equipment as soon as possible, so we don't incur any additional costs going forward. But that should hopefully be done later this year, probably around September or October. ADA improvements, that's a citywide thing that we've been working on for several years, and we will continue to work on it for years to come. The ADA keeps changing things, and we can make something compliant today, and a year from now the ADA will come in and say, well, guess what, we changed the rules, so it's got to be changed again. So we continue to work on all of our ADA accessible facilities. Any building that is a city-owned facility, we have to make sure that it becomes ADA compliant if it isn't already. So we allocate funds in the budget every year for that. Affordable housing is a very big thing on everyone's mind. You hear a lot about it in the news, and we're certainly no different. We have approximately 500 families on a wait list right now to get housing for them. And we'll be helping the Punta Gorda Housing Authority with this project at the verandas, where they already have a couple of buildings there that are for 55 and over. The new buildings will be not limited to 55 and older. It will be for families with children. It'll be for young married couples. It'll be for anybody who's on the wait list, and they're going to be able to apply if they haven't already. So we're going to support their program by offering them an 18-year loan at 1% for $340,000. And that was something that they asked for so that they could bring their grant request to the state. And they were awarded the contract for getting grant funding, so they'll be starting to work on that project in the not too distant future. We have a lot of, I'm talking fast, so I apologize if I'm going too fast, but there's a lot of information to cover in a short time. We have a lot of what we call complete streets projects that are in the works. We have Shreve Street, we have Virginia Avenue and Airport Road among them. Complete streets projects include additional sidewalks and bike paths, lighting, greenery, all kinds of nice things that make it attractive for people who have to use those roadways. So those projects are also being funded by the 1% fund. Talked a little bit about this earlier. We are still working through some of the Hurricane Irma, finishing up the project with Hurricane Irma and FEMA. FEMA gave us, as you probably all remember, we had FEMA originally agreed to give us 75% of the funds that it would cost to replace our 10 miles of seawalls that fell during Hurricane Irma. Well, FEMA ended up coming back and ending up giving us 90% of the funds that were required to replace all of our seawalls. We replaced 10 miles of seawalls in about, I think it was like 14 months or something like that. It was ridiculous. If you picture a seawall that goes all the way from Home Depot all the way to Murdoch Circle, that's about how much seawall we replaced in a very short period of time. So FEMA, part of FEMA's approval process included they want us to put riprap, which is basically crushed up cement and stonage and so forth, and they want us to put that in front of the new seawalls to keep them from sliding out and coming apart again. So we had to apply to the Army Corps of Engineers, and all the federal approvals, we're waiting on those, so that's what's going on with that. They have provided the funds to us to take care of the riprap as soon as it gets approved. But what ended up happening is, so FEMA gave us 90%, the state gave us 5%, and then locally the residents who are on the canals paid the other 5%. One of the other projects that we're starting to work on is our wastewater treatment plant. When your system gets to the point where it reaches 75% capacity, it triggers a red flag with the state, and so we have got to start working on expansion of our wastewater plant. And we had also a lease with the Fish and Wildlife Commission for the property that the wastewater plant is on. Our lease was coming up to be renewed in 2025. And our old lease was for $1,005,000, and that was for a 45-year period of time. The new lease, they came back at us with $335,000 for the same time frame for 45 more years. So we're there for a long time, but we're going to be working on the expansion of the wastewater plant there. So this is one of the other obstacles that we come in with the 93.9% build out in PGI. We have to make sure that we have a place to park the barge for staging for seawall replacement. So there is an area behind Colony Point, on the south end of Colony Point, that we plan to put in a spoil site channel where the barge will be able to go in and dock and stay overnight, or load and unload supplies and equipment. So that's, we're going to be looking for funding for that, and it'll probably come out of the Canal Advisory Committee decision. So this is another program that we always have on our budget, residential swale improvements. There are a lot of properties that over the years the swale grading deteriorates, and then we have water that backs up. So we put in budget in I think probably 4 or 5 years ago we started this, where we put originally $500,000 a year into it, and we've cleaned up a lot of the properties that were the worst case. Now we're at the point where we've been able to lower that amount to $300,000 a year, and we're keeping things going. We have a contractor that we hired to do that project for us, and they'll be completing hopefully another 191 properties this year. So then the other problem that we have, it's not a problem, it's an opportunity. When the Burnt Store Isles lock was removed several years ago to open up the waterway for boaters in Burnt Store Isles, they left the one side of the lock in place. And so now that the build out is 90.6%, what we've got to do is get that other half out of there. Right now, we can't take our big barge in there to do seawall repairs. We have to take it in pieces, and they have to assemble it inside Burnt Store Isles. So the taking out of the second half of the lock will enable us to take care of that and bring the barge in and out. As you all know, we've been working on our citywide master plan for a couple of years, and we're continuing to work through that, going through the form-based codes is the big thing that we're talking about these days. Redeveloping our land development regulations will follow that. Right now, the form-based codes will be the first thing that we're working on, and we've already started that process. We'll continue to work through that, and there'll be a lot of opportunities for citizen input. I would encourage you to read up on it if you haven't already, and make yourself familiar with some of the things that are in there. So we have a wonderful communications department. Our assistant city manager, Ms. Melissa Reichert, works very hard on communications with all social media platforms and positioning us with advertising and promotion to make sure that the city has good visibility. So she does a lot of things on a daily basis that are all involved with social media and making sure that information is shared with all the different media sources that need to be informed about things. We have a website that is available for all things Punta Gorda, and the brochure that you see there is called Welcome to Punta Gorda Life. And we have a brand new program that was introduced in 2021 called Text My Gov. And if you see the number on the screen, you just text the word hi to that number, and you'll get tuned into Text My Gov, and then you can ask a question to anybody at the city, and if it requires a specific answer, your question will be forwarded to a staff member to respond to you. That's all I have. Does anyone have any questions? Okay, well, thank you all very much. We appreciate it.